Hi, I'm Jeff Oswald, your South Carolina State Firefighters Association 1% Coordinator. The South Carolina State Firefighters Association was organized on May 30th, 1905. The first important bill fostered by your association was the Fireman's Fund Bill. It was discussed in 1905 and proposed to become a law in 1907. The initial proposed law was to create a fund for firemen derived from a 2% tax on fire insurance premiums paid by property holders in towns and cities to foreign insurance companies. After much debate and deliberation, the 2% tax was changed to a 1% tax, and the law for the Firemen's Insurance Inspection Fund was finally passed by the South Carolina General Assembly on March 10, 1910. The first annual statewide 1% distribution generated $1,600. Through real estate property that is subject to taxation, with the exception of churches, schools, and government buildings, this fund has grown exponentially in excess of $17 million annually. Along with the state law and the guidelines set forth by your association, our obligation is to protect the fund so it will be available for years to come for our future state's fire service. Our member departments are faced with annual budget constraints. The fund can be used to provide their members with benefits that otherwise may not be possible. Therefore, we commonly refer to the 1% fund as the glue that binds our fire service together. A department becomes eligible to receive their annual 1% distribution by paying their annual dues, submitting their required forms to the association and to the State Fire Marshal's office. Once the department becomes eligible to receive their 1% distribution, they can utilize the funds for their members in the categories of retirement insurance, training and education, and recruitment and retention.
Before a department can utilize any of their 1% funds, they must complete the following guidelines. Before any funds are spent over $100, they must submit and get approval. They must get 51% approval from their members. They also must get the approval signatures from their local board of trustees. And finally, they must submit their request online on our member management database to get approval from the State Supervisory Committee.
It is extremely important that everyone follows the guidelines for submitting their request. Without submitting the required information and documentation, the approval process for your request will be delayed. Not only does your association 1% staff play a vital role in your approval process, but the State Supervisory Committee does as well. I would like to provide an opportunity for one of the members of the State Supervisory Committee to explain the role and responsibilities of their committee.
Our role as members of the State Supervisory Committee is to ensure that each 1% request form submitted meets the guidelines set by the association and state law. Each member of the committee reviews each form as it comes in and submitted to ensure that 51% of the membership signatures are on the form, as well as all trustee signatures. We also like to look for supporting documentation, item descriptions, or any policies that need to be attached to each form to make sure they meet all guidelines. If at any time one of the Supervisory Committee members has a question about something listed on a 1% request form, one of us or Jeff or Janet at the association will reach out to the 1% representative for the department to clear up any information needed to move forward with the approval process. Please know that each member of the committee wants to ensure that your 1% form is approved in a timely manner. We will work in any way possible to help you out to get your forms and your request approved.
The South Carolina State Firefighters Association is charged by state law with the fiduciary responsibility of the 1% fund. One of the ways that we ensure a member department's compliance is by conducting annual audits. As I mentioned, it is extremely important for you to follow the guidelines for submitting requests for approval. Not only following the guidelines is one of the major reasons for being chosen for an audit. There are 4 ways for a fire department to be chosen for an audit. First is a random audit. There are approximately 500 fire departments that are members of the association. We would like to audit every department annually, but that is not feasible. Random audits are exactly that. We choose a fire department to perform an audit on that we have not audited in recent years. Another is when a fire department receives 1% money annually and reports spending on their Form 206, but never submits any request for approval. We choose a fire department that has not been submitting their forms for approval or have been submitting past our annual deadline date of January 31st. Next, we receive phone calls and or emails from individuals that a fire department is not doing something properly. With the association having a fiduciary responsibility, we do our diligence by placing the fire department on our audit list. Lastly, the fire department of the first vice president of the association will be audited prior to them being sworn in at our annual fire rescue conference to become the next president of our association. If your fire department is chosen for an audit, our third-party CPA firm will contact you to schedule a time and date for your initial audit. On your initial audit, your department will be required to have the following documentation present on the day of your audit: the past 3 years of the bank statements of your 1% account, the past 3 years of the monthly bank reconciliations, a copy of the 1% check received from your county treasurer, and a copy of the bank deposit slip, the check register that lists all the disbursements made from the account, supporting documentation to include the copies of all invoices, checks that were written, and receipts for all disbursements $100 or greater. Each fire department that is audited will receive a grade. The grade will be an A, B, C, D, or F. Only those departments that score a grade of a C or lower will be required to have a follow-up audit the following year. Every year it seems there are common findings that we encounter during our auditing process. We feel it would be beneficial to share some of those with you. I would like to provide an opportunity for a team member from our third-party CPA firm to share some with you.
Hi, I'm Emily Sobchak with Green Finney. We are a CPA firm that has been working with the association for many years now to help them with their fiduciary responsibilities related to the 1% funds. As Jeff mentioned, one of the ways that we help is by performing audits of the 1% funds. We perform site visits where we review documentation, and at the end of the day, the final result is a report that details any findings identified during our visit. So what I'd like to talk about now is some of the common audit findings that we see. Because if you know what findings we typically see during our visits, then you'll know how to avoid them. So one of the most common audit findings, as you could probably guess, is not submitting reports properly or timely. As Jeff mentioned, one of the ways that you might be selected for a visit is by not submitting your reports on time. And so it should be no surprise that that's one of our common findings. You also need to make sure that you're submitting Forms 206 and 207, those are the accounting forms, and the self-audit forms, by January 31st every year. The other forms that we typically review during our visits are the approval forms. Those forms should be completed in their entirety, which means you should be including the approval of at least 51% of your department members, as well as the approval by the local board of trustees, and the final approval comes from the association. Before dispersing any 1% funds, you are required to obtain approval from 51% of the department members, the local board of trustees, and the association. No funds should be dispersed from your 1% funds without those approvals. We recommend obtaining the required approvals through the submission of an annual budget. This allows you to have a significant amount of your anticipated expenditures approved in a single form, rather than having to submit individual expenditure forms for every disbursement. If you anticipate that you'll be spending more from any one budget category, more than $100 from what was approved in your annual budget, then you should submit an additional expenditure approval form in order to gain approval for that additional expense. Another typical audit finding that we see is not having adequate supporting documentation for each transaction related to the 1% funds. A good rule of thumb is to retain documentation for all transactions related to 1% funds. This means you should be retaining documentation related to your annual distribution, retaining the deposit slip for when you deposit your annual distribution, and also retaining all invoices and check copies, as well as bank statements, reconciliations, etc., related to any disbursements that you're making. If you misplace supporting documentation for a given transaction, then that should be clearly documented and signed by the appropriate parties. Another common audit finding that we see is not accurately and timely preparing your bank reconciliations. Bank reconciliations are an important internal control for your 1% funds. The bank reconciliation process involves reconciling the balance per your bank statement to the balance per your general ledger or check register. Oftentimes, those balances may differ due to outstanding checks or possibly deposits in transit. And so it's important that you're aware of what differences there are between those two balances so that you can verify that any disbursements that were made or transactions that occurred related to your 1% funds were appropriate. Another important piece of the bank reconciliation process is the review and approval of the reconciliation. Again, this should be done timely, and it should be done by someone independent of the preparer. A few other common audit findings that we see are not spending 1% funds in a timely manner. So we would generally recommend that you spend approximately the amount that you receive each year. It's okay to plan for significant purchases as long as those plans are approved by the association. But in general, you should be spending your 1% funds annually. Remember, these funds are meant to benefit each member of your department. And so the funds that you receive each year should be benefiting the members of your department that year. We also often see that departments do not have a policy requiring 2 signatures on 1% fund checks. We recommend that all checks related to 1% funds be signed by 2 individuals approved by the department. Another common audit finding is not retaining a list of attendees for all drill night or holiday dinners. It's important to remember that the association does have per person limits on any meals funded through 1% funds. And so retaining a list of attendees is crucial for us determining that those thresholds were complied with. We've covered just a handful of common audit findings today, but there are many more that we see each year. And the association has posted on its website a list of all findings noted in the most recent year's audits. So I encourage you to review those findings so you can ensure that your department has the appropriate policies and procedures in place to properly adhere to the association's guidelines.
As we have discussed, the 1% funds are meant to be used to benefit firefighters, providing benefits and paying for expenses that the regular department resources will not provide. But there are many regulations tied to these 1% funds. Every year, there are departments that are losing their 1% funds and benefits because they are not complying with the requirements and regulations. It is very important that your fire department has multiple people who are familiar with the accounting practices and regulations of the 1% funds. So you are not one of those departments that loses your 1% funds and benefits. Over the past few years, the trend has seen an increase of required follow-up audits based on the grade received on a department's initial audit. In 2018, the Legislative Audit Council conducted an audit on the state's 1% fund. A couple of findings that were reported in their audit report were poor accounting practices and fire departments not spending their money for the betterment of their membership. After reviewing the report, the State Supervisory Committee, along with the South Carolina State Firefighters Association, deemed it necessary to provide additional training for our members for their 1% fund account. In an effort to rectify the issues that were noted in the Legislative Audit Council's audit report, the association has begun conducting 1% regional training classes. The title of our class is Use It Wisely or Lose It. The class provides training for our members to aid them in their understanding of the 1% fund processes and to gain knowledge of sound accounting practices. We have created a dedicated section for the class on our website, 1% page. We encourage you to visit the page to learn more about the class and to view the current classes that have been scheduled.
You are able to gain access to the South Carolina State Firefighters Member Management System, or what's commonly known as the database, on several different locations within our website, or by going to scfirefighters.org/database. We also provide several step-by-step user guides to help you as you navigate the database world. Once you have logged into the system, you'll be able to view your name and your primary department's name right here in this gray box. If you do not see your name here, you probably have not logged into your personal account and may not be able to perform several tasks you set out to complete.
Under the Manage Roster and Delegates tab, you will be able to view your current roster, add new members, edit current members, including update security levels or grant access, or remove members from the roster. This is also where you'll select your department's delegates each year. Under the Manage Form tabs, you'll see several of the required 1% forms. You have Form 206, which is our annual accounting form, Form 207, which is the compliance and self-audit form. Both of these forms have a due date of January 31st. We also have Form 101, which is a statistician form. This form does not have a due date. We encourage you while you're in here completing 206 and 207 to go ahead and complete 101 as well. Under the Forms 201 and 202, these are our expenditure request forms. Here you'll be able to view any previously submitted requests, along with their status. You'll also be able to view what was submitted by clicking View Form and seeing the complete request. You'll also be able to add a new form by clicking this button up here and completing the form.
You have heard from several of our 1% team members today. We hope this information has been very beneficial to you and your fire department's 1% account. If you would like more information or need us for anything, please feel free to contact myself or Jana. Thank you very much.